Information overload. There's obviously been an information explosion in this country. There are more people than ever generating more and more information using newer and faster tools that process and transmit the stuff in overwhelming quantity. We seem to have lost our discipline, if we ever had it, for knowing when information is useful and valuable and when it's useless. Bureaucracies are definitely part of the problem. They seem to instinctively require information, whether they need it or not. And the media are also part of the problem. The quantity of information they produce, enormous. The quality, dubious. What's the result of this bombardment? We feel confused, frustrated, resentful, alienated, overloaded. We turn off. T.S. Eliot wrote something right to the point. Where's the wisdom we have lost in knowledge? Where's the knowledge we have lost in information?
Wisdom is to have very good judgment and a sense of the larger issues. Knowledge says, tells you how to build a bridge. Wisdom says, do you want a bridge there?
If you have a machine that can store billions of bits of information on a real-time basis, the temptation of management's learning to operate in an alien philosophy, which we're now in, is to confuse all of that data for information. And the more skilled the technician, the more they want to lay on you. So that the struggle of management is to attempt to get information which means something, as opposed to a vast printouts of data that tells you really more than you ought to know.
The process, the kind of mind needed to accumulate data, and the kind of mind needed to interpret it and understand its meaning are different kinds of minds. So that you don't have an increase in efficiency or in humanity simply because you have an increase in the amount of information that's available. In fact, you probably have a net loss.
With all the information available, there's the danger that you finally become dependent on the briefer, the man who can package it for you in a way that is comprehensible. And the briefer, in turn, may have more the qualities of an actor than of a thinker. And anybody who's ever studied a subject seriously knows that the first thing that comes to your mind is almost always wrong, even though it sounds plausible. And yet, when you are overwhelmed with so much information, you usually act, or you're tempted to act on the first thing that you think you understood. So I would say, one, we have to live with it. Second, it is I look at it as an opportunity. You're always better off knowing something than not knowing it. Third, it puts a special obligation on leaders and decision makers to explain what they're really doing.
Assuming that the leaders themselves know what they're doing. If they don't, we certainly don't. The last person who did know everything, or so it was said, was a 19th century English philosopher, economist, linguist, botanist, theologist, chemist, historian, and feminist, John Stuart Mill. But we may never again have a John Stuart Mill, for one reason. This machine, right now, contains too much information for this machine to absorb. Could it be, as some people hope, that computers are somehow the answer to information overload? I personally don't think so. Because what computers really do is organize information. And you see, knowledge is information that has been distilled and then understood, not by a machine, but by a far more complex instrument, the thinking and feeling human being. So there's the problem. There's just too much information, good information, around. And by necessity, we have become narrow specialists in a world which, I feel, desperately needs generalists.
We glorify the expert today, and we think we can't move unless there's some expert information available. We've given up on the generalist. So this desire for expertise in making decisions means that we have to satisfy ourselves that there are sufficient papers. I happen to believe in the generalist. I think you need people who are well-versed and have some excellence in areas, but I don't think that you have to be so advised to the nth degree of the expert or from the expert that you can't move.
The increase in the flow of new knowledge, in the flow of information, has made it practically impossible for anyone to keep up with his own field. I am an economist and have been so for 55 years, but I can now no longer see what's going on in my own field. The number of journals, the number of articles in the journals has increased so immensely that it is out of the question that I can read all the stuff that's published.
And perhaps the information society requires a new kind of person. Someone who refuses to be overwhelmed by bureaucratic nonsense. Someone who knows not only how to get information, but also how to select what's valuable. Unfortunately, some of us seem to be going in exactly the opposite direction.